welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Monday afternoon. Maybe some would call it evening. Joining us from New York City is Tim Bontemps.
Hello, everybody.
And just back from joining Bontemps at Springfield, Massachusetts for the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies is Ben MacMahon.
Howdy, partners. We actually did the Uncasville. I think that's how you pronounce that. The Mohegan Sun portion.
Mohegan
of the
Sun.
Yes. Yeah. Didn't make it. I still haven't been to the actual Hall of Fame. One day I'll make it there.
Also, shout out to our guy Kevin Pelton, who had his wedding celebration this weekend in Seattle.
Oh, shout out to the machine.
Congrats to Kevin Pelton on the nuptials. He will be prolific even in marriage, is my prediction. You can't slow him down.
He is the machine for a reason.
That's right. There's no slowing him down. Before we get into our division preview for today, which will be the Southeast Division, definitely the most exciting division we could think of. Today, Monday, is an off day at EuroBasket. They're down to the final 8, and NBA stars are starring over there, and especially Luka, MacMahon. Luka, I gotta say, in talking to the scouts who are there, they described Luka getting this batch of Slovenians to the Elite Eight as a great accomplishment. He did it with 42 points in the round of 16 the other day in Riga, Latvia. Completely was an absolute vintage Luka game. Step backs, bitching at the officials, talking trash to the other opponent, slow motion dominance, just using his size to kick tail. And I think they were playing the Italians. The Italians finally started double teaming him like in the third quarter. Why they didn't start double teaming in the first quarter, I don't know. But skinny Luka looked really good. If you care about Luka and the Lakers and you don't care about EuroBasket, well, be encouraged by what you're seeing out of Luka so far, MacMahon.
Yeah, after he scored 30 points in the 20-minute first half, the Italians decided, might want to throw another body at this guy, especially considering there's only one EuroLeague player on the roster. There's no naturalized citizen, which means they don't have a lob threat. I mean, completely carrying this team. He's leading them in every category. He's leading the entire tournament in scoring, almost 34 points a game. And again, these are 40-minute games where zone defense, there's no rules against it. You can plant a guy right in the middle of the paint. I tell you, now he's got a huge challenge coming up next. They've got the Germans. The Germans are the one power, like established power going into the tournament that's still standing after a batch of big-time upsets. I would say if Slovenia advances any further, this might rank atop the list of Luka's hoop accomplishments.
Number one being getting the Mavs to the finals 2 years ago, or leading Slovenia to the EuroBasket championship at age 17?
I think it's winning the EuroLeague Final Four and winning EuroLeague Final Four MVP
EuroLeague
with
Final
Real
Four.
Madrid as a teenager. I think that's the number one so far.
I would probably say that getting the Slovenians
that or EuroBasket.
The Olympics, just because Slovenia had never been to the Olympics before. The way that he did that.
And they finished fourth.
Yeah, with a 30-something point triple-double in Lithuania to clinch their Olympic spot. Comes out in the Olympics, 48 points in the opener. I mean, look, the guy's literally, he's 26 years old, can retire right now and would be a Hall of Famer. That's the resume that he has. I'm just saying, if they're able to advance further in this tournament and pull off this upset against Germany, this ranks right up there with his most impressive feats.
I mean, you mentioned it in passing, but this was a crazy weekend. I mean, we talked at the beginning of the tournament. I shouted out my guy Toko Shengelia in Georgia for beating Spain. The fact that they turned around him and Goga Bitadze, and Sandro Amukashvili, who's now on the Spurs, for those guys to beat France, even without Victor and Brody, is wild. And then Lauri Markkanen and the Finns go and upset Jokic in a truly crazy result. Like, to have a quarterfinal.
That's the biggest shocker of the tournament. That's the biggest
easy,
shocker of the tournament
easy.
so far.
To have a quarterfinal without Serbia or France Croatia has obviously fallen up. Like, Croatia's long been a power. They weren't even in the tournament.
Yeah, Spain's gone.
It's no Spain. Like, Poland, Georgia, Finland, all being in the quarterfinals of EuroBasket is pretty crazy.
By the way,
Finland. To take this, go ahead.
I was going to say
Finland. To take this one let's just take this one at a time, because Bontemps, we love him, but he tends to take off on the hot streak.
We were going to talk about all of it. It's just crazy. It was a crazy weekend.
I know, and I appreciate your insight. So Luka looks absolutely great. Germany is probably the remaining favorite, although I have to say, not that we really want to super analyze the tournament. That is not what I certainly do. I'm not going to be able to break all that down. But I will say that when it comes to this, let's remember these are 40-minute single elimination games. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like the NCAA tournament. So while you can pick a favorite, you often will see upsets. That said, I think Germany is probably the remaining favorite.
Easy.
Remaining World Cup champions. So a couple of things. First off, the Georgian national team, who's having a great run here, they've got a Serbian coach, and I'm going to botch his name. He used to actually work for the Timberwolves. I'm almost afraid to say it because I'm going to be embarrassed. Alexander Jerkic, I believe is how you say his last name. And if I screw that up, I apologize. Jackson, if you can get this guy's photo and put him in the YouTube.
He doesn't look like a basketball coach. Let's put it that way.
He could be a hero in America. So, and he's coached in the EuroLeague. He's not like he's an up and comer. He's been around for a long time, but he's sort of getting his just desserts for leading this run. He looks like a biker. He's got like a long like goatee. He wears an untucked shirt and a vest on the sideline. I always remember David Blatt when we were just, when he was sort of coming on the international scene. He was coaching the Olympics with a tucked in polo shirt. He would tuck his polo shirt into jeans. And he would put his, nobody knew who he was. So he would put his credential, he would like string it through his jeans. So he'd be over there coaching in jeans and a tucked in polo shirt. And he was leading the Russians to a bronze medal. Jerkic, and I feel like I'm going to get so mocked for how he said his name, but he's amazing. He's wearing this vest and he's leading upsets. Just a terrific run. It's one of the great things about EuroBasket. It's unfortunate that it happens in football season, at the start of the football season. So there's just no chance of getting on the American consciousness. All right, Bontemps, you mentioned Finland. You know what's going to happen here. Lauri Markkanen, he did this a couple of years ago. It was a great run at EuroBasket that was right before his time with the Cavs having that big rebound season. He's having another great summer. He's averaging 26 points, I believe, so far for the Finnish. I got to get the Finnish Team Finland's nickname. As long as I'm botching European pronunciations. It means wolf pack in Finnish. And I will botch it, but it's an awesome nickname. He had 29 points in the victory over Serbia. And, like in the case of France, who lost this week to Georgia, France, as we talked about, didn't have all their team. Victor Wembanyama not there. Nicolas Batum and Rudy Gobert seem like they've retired, or definitely retired from this summer at least. Suzy Zhang, I believe, is how you. No, I don't believe. I'm trying. Suzy Zhang or Suzajengi is the nickname of the Finnish basketball team. I am so embarrassed myself as an ugly American. All the Finns speak perfect English. Which means Wolfpack. Anyway, the French didn't have the same team that won the silver last year in Paris. The Serbians who won the bronze did have the same team. And while Bogdan Bogdanovic suffered an injury,
I was going to say minus him being hurt,
bleed over into the season for the Clippers. We'll know more about that soon. They did the same team, including Nikola Jokic. And so the Finns came in and won. Markkanen had 29 in that game. He is having a fabulous summer. And I want to talk for a minute, Bontemps, about sort of the breakout young player in this tournament so far. He is not the leading scorer for Finland. That is Markkanen. He's powering them. Mika Murinen, who, if you follow recruiting, which, if you're listening to this podcast in early September, you probably do, but Mika Murinen is a 6'10" forward who is, I believe, 17 years old. He's still in high school. He's going to be a senior in high school in the Phoenix area. Born and raised in Finland. His mom played basketball at North Carolina, and his dad was I think a pro player in Finland, or played for the Finnish national team. He has been the breakout young star of this tournament. He's not putting up enormous numbers, but he's, a tall kid. His nickname is, Bontemps, do you know his nickname?
I do. I'll let you say it for the people.
It is Slim Jesus.
That is correct.
Which I'm not sure is appropriate. He doesn't resemble Jesus, but he is slim because he's pretty young. And he hit 2 crushing 3-pointers over the top of Jokic on switches that helped the Finns get over the hump the other day. He is, in talking to scouts, eccentric, likes to talk, and fancies his game after Ant Edwards, which is not what you'd expect from a 6'10" guy whose nickname is Slim Jesus. But I've been advised by scouts, he's going to go play in college next year. He's still 2 years away from the draft, I think, unless there's reclassifications. I can't keep track of this. He's going to be a top recruit. There's a bunch of teams that are trying to get him. But anyway, Mika Murinen is a guy to be paid attention to for sure coming out of this, Bontemps. And I don't know if you got to see them play at all, but definitely someone to keep in the back of your mind. Luka was 17 when he arrived, and no one's comparing him to Luka, but Luka was 17 years old when he really started EuroBasket, and it started the momentum of Luka to the NBA. You're going to start hearing momentum for this guy, at least as a European prospect.
Yeah, Murinen's a really interesting prospect. We'll see what happens with him over the next year or two. Like you said, he's going to be heavily recruited. We'll see what happens next year. He certainly seems like he's poised to potentially be a lottery pick in 2027, at least as of now. But, to me, the story of this, and we talked about the start of the tournament, the story of this to me is Lauri Markkanen looking like the guy he was going into that first year with Will Hardy in Utah. And that could be one of the real interesting storylines, as we discussed, going into the tournament, going into the season. If Lauri Markkanen looks like an all-star caliber player again and is playing at that kind of level, that puts a lot of things on the table in Utah, up to and including potentially getting a haul for him in a trade and continuing to push toward this, very youth-centric rebuild they're clearly directed towards at the moment, or just having him be a centerpiece of what they're doing going forward alongside Ace Bailey and Walker Kessler and Walter Clayton Jr. and what could be another high pick in next year's draft. So, this is a super interesting young prospect, but to me, this is all about Markkanen going out there and looking like a stud again after essentially a lost season for him.
Yeah, but listen, the finisher is a nice nickname. It ain't Slim Jesus. Come on. Slim Jesus. This kid is all hair, length, leaping ability, and energy.
And he's tats. I never talk about tats, but this kid has.
He's got some tats.
This kid has tattoos on his arm that imply that he has had pain in his life. which is not his demeanor at all.
Well, the rim has pain when he's on the floor. I know that. I mean, this kid, he's like 6'10", 185, but
I think that's right.
he
I'm not sure he's
goes,
185, but
well, so they listen to that. He throws it down hard. And look, he's got a chance. Like he has lottery pick type of potential. Obviously, there's a long way to go. But yeah, from an NBA perspective, I don't know. That's interesting. What is the bigger story? This kid's emerged as a potential lottery pick.
well, look, the scouts who I'm relying on to feed me information. They're not going over there to evaluate Luka Doncic's step back.
Right.
So Luka.
I mean, I definitely think the bigger NBA story is right now is Markkanen. Like this kid's an interesting prospect, but like if Larry Markkanen's an all-star caliber player again next season, that could have a lot of ramifications across the board.
I will say
now.
Markkanen is only shooting 29% on threes. So
but
I mean
he's having to carry the offense in a way that he wouldn't if he was traded. And I don't think the question with Markkanen is ever going to be, can he shoot the three ball?
Right.
But I think Markkanen has to continue playing like this to position the Jazz to really be able to get big time value for him. Because listen, that contract, there was no hometown discount. That is a big, big, fat contract. And it's kind of an interesting dilemma. Like, yeah, he's potentially putting the Jazz in position to get good value for him in the trade market. You might also put him in position to win more than the 16, 18 games that most people have him penciled in for.
Okay, some other things NBA wise. The Latvians got eliminated in this round. Kristaps Porzingis had a 34-point, 19 rebound game in the round of 16 when they got eliminated. So those stats looked good. He averaged 20 points a game and 6 rebounds in this series or in this tournament. However, the scouts were not blown away by the way he looked. They felt he looked not the sort of impact player that they're used to seeing. And he admitted that while he feels a lot better than he did in the spring, that he's still got a way to go. That he's not back to the full health that he was at. Now, how do you quantify that? I don't know. But it's a positive, if you're a Hawks fan, it's a positive that he's feeling better and that he's not being, they were pulling the guy out of games because he couldn't get up the court. So the fact that let me see how many minutes he averaged. He averaged 27 minutes a game, which is, pretty high. So they obviously needed him out there. That's a good sign. But I wouldn't say that the scouts came home raving about the way Porzingis looked, whatever that's worth to you. Not my eyes. I'm trusting the pros on that. Also,
I think the bigger thing is that he's just out on the court being productive. I mean, he may not have been, 110%, but given where he was in the spring, the fact he's putting up numbers and playing decently in this tournament, I think is at least trending toward him being ready to go at the start of the regular season, which if we're looking at it from a pure NBA perspective, I think that matters more than him being at peak efficiency in EuroBasket. He certainly looked better than he did in the spring.
Well, that's
he could barely get through games sometimes for the Celtics.
Well, there were no setbacks and there were no new injuries. I will say Latvia getting bounced in the round of 16 when they've got the elimination games on their turf is awfully disappointing.
For sure. Porzingis was 10 of 38 on threes. That's 28%. I'm just passing it along. I'm not trying to judge it. I'm just telling you what the stats were. He did average 9 rebounds. Giannis has been dominant. Absolutely took out the Israelis yesterday. Denny Advia was playing for Israel. He did not even put Advia on Giannis because I think they thought he'd foul out because he was just a freight train going to the basket. Giannis is shooting 73% in this He's only taken 3 threes. He's made one of them. He is shooting 73% in this tournament. And, he's only played in 4 games. They've sat him out of a couple because they were trying to hold him for when it mattered. Against Spain in the group phase, he had a huge game where I think he had 14 rebounds, 9 assists, and I think 26 points or something like that. He is been exactly what you'd expect. He looks great, and not that that's a surprise, but don't worry about him. He had the injury at the end of the season. That looks like it's all healed.
37-10 against Israel. Man, I don't know. I don't know how many of them were dunks, but a lot of them, including 2 where he took off beyond the dotted line. We talk about the difficulty of scoring in half court in the FIBA game. There ain't no stopping him in transition. Not in the NBA, and definitely not, with those Euro League level athletes. And he's been posting up a lot. He's been an absolutely devastating force.
Yeah, and your Turkey A update?
Ooh.
Mentioned Turkey A yet?
Hey, beat Serbia.
Beat Serbia.
Not the only ones now, but still a pretty impressive performance by old Alpi Şengün and the boys in that one.
I was talking to a guy that I know who's a Serbian NBA executive. And, I was saying, because when the Turkish beat the Serbians, it was in pool play, and the Serbians had already advanced. And I was like, I don't trust, Serbia is known to pull some punches, play a little, play a little game where they don't show their full situation, when, until it really matters. And he was like, no, he's like, Jokic is not quite on his game. He's not quite in top shape. He warned me, he goes, this loss puts us in the same bracket as Germany. I don't like it. So
Bogdanovic got hurt, and that was huge.
Yeah. So Serbia being out before the semifinals, much less the round of 8, is a real upset. But Şengün was terrific in that game. We mentioned, I think he outplayed Jokic in the game against Sweden, which was the round of 16. He had another really good game. I think he had 24 points, 16 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 blocks. So tremendous performance for him. He's played really well. Shane Larkin as well. So, but Şengün looks good. And for any Heat fans out there, Pelle Larsson, who they drafted last year in the second round, I believe, right, Bontemps? He was a second round pick last year? Or was he a first round pick?
Yes.
Second round
pick.
They are eliminated. The Swedes are eliminated, but he had a good tournament. He didn't shoot the ball from range too well, but he averaged 19 points, shot 46% overall. And unless you guys have anything else to say about EuroBasket, I'm prepared to pivot to the Southeast with that Heat. Oh, I will mention Franz Wagner. He's having a good tournament. He's averaging 20 points, shooting 53% from the field, 51% from the field. No, 53% from the field. But in classic Franz Wagner fashion, only 33% from 3. And Dennis Schroder, who's the reigning World Cup MVP, new member of the Sacramento Kings, is averaging 20 points a game, playing very well, shooting over 50%. But any more takes on EuroBasket, gents?
I think I just can't believe the number of upsets that
that's true,
that we've seen. Yeah. And it's going to be awfully interesting seeing, like, one of Finland or Georgia is going to be in the medal round of EuroBasket, which is pretty crazy. And, like, you could have Giannis and Luka playing in the final, which, I didn't anticipate thinking was a possibility going into the tournament, and I still don't think it's likely. But
it's not likely.
But they're the 2 best players, and the biggest competition in front of them is off the board.
I will just say that, you know, to me, I mean, I know who Giannis and Luka are. To me, this is about which young players can ascend, who take the most from this experience. I know, we know who Dennis Schroder is. He may, for all I know, he'll lead the Germans to this win and he'll be named MVP.
Right.
To me, marketing to a certain extent, but Şengün and Franz Wagner, these are guys who are all-star level players
and
in the
marketing.
NBA.
I mean, it's a huge chance for marketing too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, look, like for Finland, like this, it's not like Finland's ever had any history like this. Like,
Yeah, and it's not like he's played in a lot of high leverage NBA games. Yeah.
No, listen, Markkanen has literally never played in an NBA playoff game. These are the biggest games of Markkanen's career.
I would say for sure. And the other thing too, this is probably going to drive people insane. Dennis Schroeder's going to make the Hall of Fame, and I think he's definitely going to make the Hall of Fame if they win this tournament, which is going to cause people to go berserk. But when it's a World Basketball Hall of Fame of all levels. When you look at Dennis Schroeder's international career, I think if they win this tournament, he's going to make the Hall of Fame eventually as an international entry, which, will, I'm sure, cause people to go crazy, but he's got a pretty damn good international resume if they win this thing.
Yeah, like Tony Kukoc, for example, made the Hall of Fame. And it wasn't.
I hear you. Kukoc also was a key piece of NBA championship teams.
Kukoc, here are the players who have, in the modern era, who have won World Cup MVP. All right. We're going to go back to 1982. All right. And most of these names that you're going to hear are Hall of Famers. Okay. So Doc Rivers, Drazen Petrovic, Tony Kukoc, Shaquille O'Neal, Dejan Biodriga. Probably botched that one. Yugoslavian.
Yes,
don't know.
That one is not accurate, whatever it is.
You're right. I got a lot of egg on my face with the pronunciations. Dirk Nowitzki, Pau Gasol. I got Nowitzki right. Pau Gasol, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Ricky Rubio, Dennis Schroeder. I don't know about Rubio, but he's another guy. Where's your take on Rubio in the?
I would say if it's the same case. Solid NBA career, spectacular international career.
And I don't think Ricky has nearly the resume internationally that Dennis does. I mean, Ricky was on better teams, but I mean, Dennis Schroeder was World Cup MVP, won the World Cup, and if they win EuroBasket, like World Cup champion, EuroBasket champion, and potential World Cup MVP and EuroBasket MVP, my guess is he will likely end up being MVP if they win.
I'm not, look, the way that Hall of Famers get elected is opaque, and especially for international folks, it's like a committee. So I don't know. My gut feel on this is Schroeder's an MVP or in the Hall of Fame right now. I would say he's close, but he's not there. And I would agree with you if he wins EuroBasket.
Yeah, if he wins MVP, like there are very few guys who've won EuroBasket MVP and World Cup MVP and won both tournaments.
If you play 10 years in the NBA and you have those two trophies on your mantle, you're probably getting in. As for Rubio, even though the Spanish won some medals with him, he was only a driving force for them in the one World Cup where he won. But, he did win MVP. So whatever.
And he was
he's got a shot. He's got a shot for sure.
The first or second youngest EuroLeague player in the history of that league.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got a shot. But I think, like Dennis, it's just the point was more that, like, people certainly, understandably, do not think of Dennis Schroeder as a Hall of Fame player. And he's going to have a pretty good case as far as the international part of it goes if they win this tournament.
How many people, do more people know about Schroeder turning down $80 million and then posting that Instagram photo with him in front of like two Bentleys and like, or do they know that he won World Cup MVP?
More people know about the contract for sure. Because that's with the Lakers.
Definitely the contract.
All right. Southeast Division. Let's give it its proper attention. The Orlando Magic, our favorite to win the Southeast Division, our forecast from our illustrious panel at ESPN projected the Magic to win 50 games this season. Let me go back and look and see the last time the Orlando Magic won 50 games. I'm going to do that right now.
It's got to be in the Dwight days.
I mean, it's definitely in the Dwight days. I would say it was 2000 and it's probably 2010.
Well, they made the finals in 2010, right? So
2009.
Oh, that's right.
They lost the conference finals to the Celtics in 2010.
All right. They last
2011. You were close, Bontemps.
Yeah.
Well, it was one of those Dwight years for sure. It was there was 10. It was either 9, 10, or 11.
And since then, they have been over 500 twice.
Haven't won a playoff series, right?
Yeah, last year they finished exactly 500. Yes, they have not won a playoff series since that 2010 season.
Yep.
Won 52 games next year. We're bounced in the first round. Last year was such a wonky year for them with their two best players both going out with oblique injuries, which how often do you even hear about oblique injuries in basketball? Plus Suggs missed so much time, and Suggs is a huge piece for them, a huge part of what they do. But they made a all-in, go for it now deal or bring in Desmond Bane. I think they certainly have 50 win potential. How dangerous they are come playoff time, I'm not certain. And Bane fixes a lot of their offensive issues, but I still think they're a little light in the playmaking, although the natural development from Franz and Banchero could address that issue.
Well, they did sort of under the radar sign Tyus Jones to a 1-year deal to help with that. Although if I'm them, I'm hoping some of their playmaking comes from guys like Jalen Suggs and Anthony Black. You're waiting for Anthony Black to take a big step forward. This is his third season, and you're hoping that there's a lot of belief in his potential. But just to go over their offseason real quick, 4 first-round picks and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for Desmond Bane. After basically sitting on the sidelines for the trade market for half of a decade, they jump all the way and up to their eyeballs, mortgaging their future control to get Bane. What I see with that move, when I see a move like that, that leads me to think there's a fire been lit by somebody, because it's not the way the organization has typically operated. So, and then of course they signed Paolo Banchero to a 5-year supermax, $240 million, I think, if he hits the All NBA. So they are looking. They have some non-guarantees, including Jonathan Isaac, but next year, when all their money kicks in, Jalen Suggs' money kicks in now, but starting next year, Franz Wagner, $42 million, Des Bane, $40 million, Jalen Suggs, his number actually goes down, but still $32 million, Paolo Banchero, $41 million. That is, over $150 million for those 4 players in an apron era. They are heavily invested, and all of them signed for a long time. Wagner, his 5-year max kicks in now. Bane is signed for 4 more years. Suggs' 5-year contract kicks in now. Banchero was under contract for 6 more years. They extended Wendell Carter last year. He's going to get an $8 million raise in next year. Bontemps, they are heavily invested in this roster, and sure, they could always make a trade, but they don't like to trade. They seem to believe that this core is taking them back to the top.
Yeah, I mean, they really went all in on Desmond Bane, and and in the wake of the trade, Jeff Weltman talked about the fact they want to be competing for Eastern Conference championships and being in the finals and being that kind of team, and that's the kind of move you go all in to make if you think you're that kind of team. I mean, it's reminiscent of when the Bucks went and got Jrue Holiday, right? Like they went all in to get the guy they thought was going to be the thing that put them over the top, and Now, the other part of that is the Bucks said Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Right.
And is Paolo Banchero that good? Is Franz Wagner that good? Like, this is as much a bet on Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner as it is on the Magic as a whole, right? And those guys were both injured and, frankly, I think disappointing last year. Like, when Jalen Suggs didn't play, the Magic weren't very good, and that was with Paolo. That was whether Paolo Banchero was healthy or not. So, like we've talked about before, yes, he got the max deal this summer. He's a terrific young player. He's got a very bright future, but I think this is a huge year for him. And there's a world where he comes out and is a guy that's a first or second team All NBA kind of player and makes a leap into the top 10 for player rankings a year from now. And Orlando looks like a team that can make the finals. And there's a world where he's still a very inefficient scorer. And despite adding Bane, they still have some offensive issues. And they're more like the fourth best team in the East. And, looking like a team that maybe wins a series as opposed to one that I certainly think has the potential, if it goes right, of winning 3 series and getting to the finals. So, those two guys have, I think, a ton of pressure on them. And we've talked about the Des Bane trade a lot. I love the fit. I love Jalen Suggs. I think those guys together are an awesome fit. And, they've got a deep roster. Jamal Mosley's done a great job building a defensive identity there. The only missing piece left at this point is for those two guys to really become efficient, consistent offensive producers and to lift this team up into the top part of the league on offense. And if that happens, Orlando's going to be a bear to deal with all season.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Paolo's relative inefficiency. Again, primary options in their early 20s, you're not going to find a whole lot of those guys who are going to be really efficient. And I think that you have to consider the circumstances when we talk about their lack of playmaking, their lack of shooting, which obviously creates spacing issues. Then it's going to be difficult for Paolo to operate in that way. Different position, but I think in somewhat similar to Cade Cunningham in Detroit in the sense of with the improvement in spacing, suddenly Cade Cunningham looked like a much better player. And so we'll see, the idea of bringing in Bane is not just bringing in his production, but bringing in his gravity and hoping it gives room to breathe for Paolo and for Franz.
All right, one of the biggest risers in our predictions, a team that is considered amongst the contenders, the Atlanta Hawks, who ESPN very aggressively projects to 47-35 with a 4th best record in the Eastern Conference. The Hawks with a number of significant moves over the summer, primarily trading basically in a salary cap dump. They had cap space, and they took advantage of their cap space to acquire players from contending teams that sort of didn't fit on their roster. The Celtics had to cut payroll, especially in the wake of the Jason Tatum injury. They had to offload Kristaps Porzingis. It cost them a pick, but Porzingis ends up in Atlanta. The Timberwolves couldn't afford to keep Naz Reid, Julius Randle, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They re-sign Randle and Reid, and they send Na to Atlanta in a sign and trade. Was really just they couldn't afford him as a salary move. And then even to a certain extent, there's one more move, and I'm forgetting that they did this exact thing with just recently. Anyway, the interesting thing about the Hawks is their 2 highest paid players. I mean, they've got this young core, which we're going to talk about in a second.
Right.
But from a transaction standpoint, the Hawks' 2 highest paid players are Trae Young and Porzingis. Both of them are sitting there extension eligible. Actually, Porzingis may not be able to extend for a while, right? Bontemps till after the trade.
Yeah, I think that these got to wait for the moratorium because they didn't do it at the time of the trade.
Okay, so maybe Porzingis isn't on their plate right now, and they can take a look at him for a few months before deciding. But Trae Young is. And Young has a $49 million player option for next season. He can opt out of it and become a free agent. And this is a classic case of the aprons. Under a different time, I think a guy who's been a franchise player, still putting up great numbers, is a guy that you may extend. In the current era where you cannot get out over your skis on a big contract, I think the Hawks have got to be more cautious. And I think that's one of the reasons they have not done a Trae Young extension, or at least not made it a priority. They can certainly extend him throughout the season. It's not something that has to be done. Actually, is there a deadline on that, Bontemps? I never want to assume.
No, I had Porzingis backwards. They can do Porzingis anytime too. They're both extension eligible right now.
When the Porzingis case, there's a health issue.
They can both be free agents. They both can be extended all the way to the end of the season.
Okay, so that's a thing, and there's always a dozen or so things on media day that you want to see, and one of the things on media day is what Trae Young says about that. Whether Trae Young is going to, make this an issue or not. Certainly something to keep an eye on, but that is a big thing for the Hawks going forward, because, they have some money tied up in Jalen Johnson, who unfortunately missed most of last season with a shoulder injury, but is one of their really good young players. There's excitement around Zachary Ricochet, although I obviously didn't mention Ricochet amongst the standout players in EuroBasket. He did okay. I was talking to some scouts, and they told me that, Ricochet and Bilal Coulibaly, both of them are a little young to compete at the EuroBasket level. Even though they're high draft picks, they're still young, and that's a tournament largely played with men, and that showed up. Although Ricochet did shoot over 40% on threes, he did not start. He came off the bench. He only played 17 minutes a game. Coulibaly, go ahead, MacMahon.
Given the way Ricochet played in the second half of the season, I think it's fair to say that his middling performance in EuroBasket was a pretty massive disappointment. He's young. He was also the number one.
It was a disappointment. I don't know if it was massive. I would, just the scouts.
I would say he was fine. They didn't start him. He came off the bench and was fine. He didn't have a great tournament, but he also they had him in a bit role, which is, not a new story for France. As we know, they tend to take a while to lean on any of the young guys. I mean, I would say Bilal Coulibaly had a pretty disappointing tournament.
They seem to lean pretty heavily on a young guy in the Olympics. I forget his name.
Sure, yes. If we're comparing everybody to Victor, then there's going to be a lot of disappointments.
Okay,
I don't think anybody's.
My point is, Ricochet. I get it was a weak
but he's
draft.
not. Yes, he's not
number one overall pick. Let's not treat him with kid gloves.
I'm not. I just wouldn't say it was he's not Cooper Flagg and he's not Victor Wembanyama. I think we're just being realistic about it. I would say he had a middling tournament. Like Brian said, he shot the ball well. He did okay. I think, look, I would say long term, the guy that he reminds me of is another French guy who just got celebrated for having a long, decorated international career. I believe he's retired, and Nick Batum. I think that's the kind of player I think he's going to be long term. And Nick Batum, I don't think ever made an all-star team, but is
made a lot of money.
But he made a lot of money.
By the way, he hasn't retired.
Right. Well, he retired from France.
Yeah.
They honored him this summer. But that's a guy who, as a 6'10", versatile guy who could shoot the three and guard multiple positions, was an incredibly valuable, long-term, high-level role player. And I think that's probably the destiny for Ricochet in the NBA. And I think he's on track to do that. So that's all. To me, coming out of that tournament, I can at least see that path for him. We're 2 years into Bilal Coulibaly's career, and we haven't seen a lot of growth yet from him. I mean, there's been flashes of stuff, but it's going to be interesting to see what he looks like this year. But yeah, if you're looking at Ricochet and thinking, hey, is this guy going to be a 5-time All-Star? I think you're probably going to be disappointed. But if you look at this year's draft, I don't think there's a lot of guys who are in that conversation coming out of it either. Or last year, I should say.
What's interesting to me about the Hawks. They obviously made win now moves, put them in a position where, top four in the East, home court advantage in the first round should be a possibility. They should definitely be vaulted out of their perennial spot in the play-in team. And they've put together a team or a young core that really seems to complement Trae Young well. And by complement him well, I'm primarily talking about can protect him on the defensive end with Dyson Daniels, with, Reese Shea, Porzingis' rim protection, some Jalen Johnson's length and athleticism. But when to getting back to your thing, the long-term outlook for Trae Young in Atlanta is murky at the minimum at this point. This is a guy, he has been the face of the Atlanta Hawks for 7 years. He's averaged 25 and 10, just led the league in assists. His offensive production has been elite. But there's question marks about whether this is going to, be a long-term marriage. And like, I understand. And he has, like, listen, he had big time playoff success. The man took a bow on the floor at Madison Square Garden, but that's the only, that one run to the Eastern Conference Finals is the only playoff success that they've had. And I get, I get taking a cautious approach to committing to Trae Young as a maximum salaried face of a franchise if you're trying to make put together a contender.
All right. When you talk about all-time great Hawks, obviously you're starting with Bob Pettit.
I was waiting for a way to get a Bob Pettit reference.
I did say since Dominique.
I know. It's just MacMahon, who's Al Horford or Trae Young? Now remember, Al Horford was on some team. They both have 4 All-Star appearances as Hawks. Al Horford was on some teams, like they had 60-win teams Al Horford was on.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Al Horford, let's see, they got out of this.
Look, you could argue for Dikembe. You could argue for
Joe
Horford.
Johnson?
You could argue for Joe Johnson. You could argue, for
Trae
a few
Young,
guys. But I would say Trae.
I would say Trae. I would say Trae. Again, Trae's offensive production, it's not as high as the guy he got traded for on draft night, and he's always going to kind of be linked there, although he outlasted Luka as far as their team,
with his team,
for the first franchise goes. But Trae's,
well, Luka's team didn't want to sign him to the 3rd contract.
Well,
Trae's
and,
team.
and they didn't want to sign him to the Supermax for sure. And look, I don't blame the Hawks for not wanting to commit the full max here. But I on the flip side of that, I think they can honestly look Trae in the eye and say, hey, we have invested in building a roster around you that really fits, that we believe is going to really give us a chance to win. And we would prefer that you be part of that. And then you've got to say, at this price. And I don't know what exactly, I don't know what exactly the right price is. I just know it ain't the max.
Yeah. Okay. So the Miami Heat next up here in our forecast, 39 and 43, a play-in team in the Eastern Conference. Last year, the Heat won just 37 games. That was their fewest wins since the first year after LeBron left. And that was the year where Chris Bosh had one of his blood clots. He only played 40 games. And let's see, Wade played 62 games that year. But that was, that was their sort of lowest production team in a decade. In the offseason, their big move was trading for Norman Powell. They got a very good value in that deal. They have a couple of significant contract decisions. Tyler Hero, we had this conversation a few months ago comparing Young and Hero. They're both kind of in the same boat. Tyler Hero has 1 year left on his contract. He cannot be a free agent this summer. He is there is no option. So the Demand with Hero is not the same. And I will point out that a year ago in this exact spot, not that Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler are the same, the Heat's stance was, let's see you for another year and then we'll take a look. Now, obviously, with certain players in the past, they extended Butler early before that. They extended Bam Adebayo early. Bam was the most recent.
If you look at their roster, like we've talked about before, it looks like they're setting up for 27 to some degree. So I don't think he'll be getting extended.
Yeah.
No, and look, man,
barring him taking some huge discount to stay there or something, obviously, but I think short of that, he won't be extending.
I don't think it's fair to Trae Young to put Tyler Hero at his level.
Oh,
I would agree.
Excuse me,
also.
sir. Tyler Hero was an all-star last year.
Okay, Trae Young is a significantly more accomplished player.
Right, but it's the same. It's the same thing. You're trying to decide whether it's the max or not. You're trying to decide whether or not to pay a guy who's sub-superstar.
Right.
So when you look at the Heat, you have a couple of questions of them. One, are they satisfied with sticking around, trying to be a play-in team, or which direction are they going to go? The Heat ethos is you always try to maximize your team. The other thing is they have a couple of guys like, what do they do with Andrew Wiggins? When they traded for Wiggins, the key piece that they got back for Jimmy Butler, I think they saw a vision of what of how he could fit with them. In the case of Wiggins, he can be a free agent after this season, although I think the likelihood of him turning down a $30 million player option based on where he's played during this contract with the Warriors and then with the Heat is unlikely.
I think it depends how his year goes. If he has a good year, he'll opt out.
Right, but he's also extension eligible, but I don't think that their Heat are. I'm not sure there's much of a real conversation to have there right now. But also, is Wiggins a guy who they would consider retrading? Is that a player in the market who they would consider, seeing what they could get? They really like the upside of Khalil Ware, who had a very good second half of his rookie season. They made him off limits in various trade talks. And then they have sort of the perplexing case of Jaime Jaquez, who had an excellent rookie year and a big-time sophomore slump, where I think the Heat were not thrilled with his overall demeanor after his success after his rookie year. So there's a lot of could go one way or the other. Then they have the expiring contract of Terry Rozier. Obviously, Rozier has been a huge disappointment on a number of fronts. But if you look at their future draft picks, they've moved past the draft pick that they owed the Heat. That they owed the Thunder. So they're in better control of their future picks. They still have an outstanding pick, I think, that they might have given for Rozier. I'm not sure, but they're in decent position with their picks because they got they've got some young players on their roster. If there becomes a star player available, is what I'm beating around the bush here.
Yes.
The Heat are in position to put together an offer. I'm not sure it can trump everybody else's offer, but with the collection of young players, draft picks, and contracts that they have that can be moved, they could be a hunter in a case of a star player becoming available. So in the past,
that's why they didn't trade. That's why they didn't trade for Kevin Durant, because they did not push their chips in on Kevin Durant because they were not close enough to being good enough, which I think was the correct move, as we've talked about before, and because there's not going to be a shortage of guys in the future who have a preference to play in Miami. So unlike other teams, the Heat have the ability to wait on some of these things. And sometimes their fans get mad that they haven't, added more guys in recent years or whatever. But I don't think anybody looking at the Heat the way the last couple of years went, to me, should have looked at it and said what they should do is trade a bunch of stuff for Kevin Durant. That was not going to make them a team that's good enough to contend in the East. If Kevin Durant was on this team instead of Andrew Wiggins, we wouldn't be talking about them as a top 3 team in the East. Maybe they'd be 4th. They'd probably be 5th or 6th. They'd be like Milwaukee and these other teams, like be pretty good, but they're not going to be a difference-making team. And to your point, they have the ability, if somebody pops up and says, I really want to go to Miami, to at least make a decent pitch for them.
Yeah, the Heat are known for 2 things: paragraph in the paint culture and star hunting, right? And listen, they always are going to be on the list for stars.
I would say this though. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
They're always going to be on the list for stars. And just like you guys have laid out, whether it is setting themselves up to be big fishers in the free agency market coming up here in a couple of summers, or in the trade market now, it feels like the Heat are kind of they're in an in-between phase right now. Right, they're in the post Jimmy destruction. What's our next chapter phase?
A year ago, I looked at the lay of the land and said somebody is going to want to raise their hand and say, "Get me to San Antonio."
Mm-hmm.
I do not feel that way about Miami. I think there's people want the taxes. They want the city of Miami.
Yeah.
This isn't a roster that you look at and say, boy, they add a shrewd trade and they're going to take off. And that's not a shot at Bam or anybody else. They've had a lot of success in the last decade, even post LeBron, 2 trips to the finals. But I'm not excited about this team. Now, they could make 2 moves and change everything, and they have a long history of making shrewd moves. I am sure that they will be a very competitive team. I'm sure that Spoelstra will get the most out of them. I'm sure they will have many teams go in there to Miami and take it on the chin, because that is the way it is. But I'm not excited right now about this team.
Yeah, I mean, last year, to me, their over-under, I believe, is 37.5, which I think is the best bet on the board. Last year, it's somewhere in the high 30s. It's either 37, 38, or 39.5. And last year, as you said, I believe they went 37 and 45, and they were 14 and 28 in clutch games and had just catastrophically bad numbers in the fourth quarters of games to like a comical level. They were getting outscored by like 17 points per 100 in the clutch. They were like one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the fourth quarter in the whole league. It became clearly a psychological thing as the year went along. I don't think that's going to continue. Yeah, 38.5. Thanks, Jackson. So I think they're going to be better, and I think they'll be competitive. And I think a full season of Wiggins, getting Norm Powell essentially for free, having Tyler Hero, having ascended at another level as a player. He had a very good year last year. Bam had a particularly, I think, pretty bad season by his standards. He was not very good offensively throughout the year. I expect he'll be better. I think that's more of an anomaly than some kind of new trend for him. So I think they'll be better. But yeah, to your point, unless there's a thing that changes, whether it's Khalil Ware really pops or Nikola Jovic really pops, or they make a couple moves that we don't see right now. Yeah, I think they're a team that's going to be the sort of team that they've been, which is like competitive in the East, but not overwhelmingly so, which I think is part of why they didn't rush to extend Jimmy. And I think it's why they're minding their P's and Q's and waiting to see what comes along over the next couple of years.
All right. The Charlotte Hornets, who are on an extended playoff list streak. I should look it up, but our forecast has them
2016, I believe, when they lost to the Heat in 7 games, I believe is the last time they made the playoffs.
That's a tough decade. Hornets 26 and 56 in our projections. Big offseason moves. They swapped out Yusef Nurkic for Colin Sexton. They drafted Con Knipple, which I think would probably be what their big offseason would. They took on Pat Connaughton in a salary dump. Look, I don't know what to say. I have no idea how many games LaMelo was going to play. He has not been able to be a significant factor for the last couple of years because of those ankle injuries. I know that they have searched high and low and examined all kinds of different things and talked about different training and different things they could put in his shoe and all this kind of stuff. But it was 47 games last year. The year before was 22. The year before was 36. He was an all-star the last time he played more than half of the games. Well, I guess he played more than half last year. He played 75 and 21, 22 and was an all-star after being rookie of the year. So I don't know. I think if you're watching this team, you're saying Knipple and Brandon Miller are your bets that they develop into the kind of wings that are difference-making players, and you hope LaMelo stays healthy. And I think if you're looking at them, they are in good position picks wise. A lot of it's because they keep making trades with the Suns, getting picks. They have some possible trade pieces on their roster. But I don't know. If you're watching them, you're looking for Knipple and whether LaMelo can stay healthy. I'm not sure what else to say.
I think when you're talking about possible trade pieces, LaMelo's one of them.
Interesting. He's got 4 years and 170, 180 million left.
But this is sort of like I don't disagree with you, MacMahon, but this is sort of a Zion Williamson situation where, again, LaMelo is a big time talent as a player. He's also not been able to stay on the court. But set aside any other criticism you have of his game, right?
Yeah.
He hasn't been available. So before you have any discussion, to me, if you're Charlotte, before you have any discussion of whether you should or should not trade LaMelo, I think the first thing you have to see is, can the guy play 70 games? Because if you can't play 70 games, you probably shouldn't trade him anyway, because you're not getting any kind of value back to make it worth trading him at that point. So,
and that's exactly it. The question, should or should you not trade LaMelo? The answer is determined by, okay, what kind of value is there for him in the market? And right now, it's not nearly enough because you can't rely on him being out on the floor. And then, just there's a lot of issues with the style of play. And, we've gone over that, and Hornets Reddit gets all fired up. But it's, look, man, the facts are the facts. It is a very difficult way to win when you have a guy who's just chunking up garbage and reaching on defense and doesn't seem to really care all that much about winning, unless it's like there's a contest to see who gets the most Instagram likes.
Well, and this is another example of, we're going to talk about it with the next team up too, I think, in that you mentioned it, Brian, like since Rick Schnall and Gabe Plotkin, the owners of the Hornets, took over a couple of years ago, I think they've done a really nice job. Like,
they've made some smart trades. I agree.
They made smart trades. I think Charles Lee's got a chance to be a good head coach. Jeff Peterson's a well-regarded guy. They hired him to run the team. They've done a good job accumulating assets, but they haven't been lucky in the lottery. They drafted Tijan Salawan last year, the French wing, who's a very long-term project. Like, he's a very raw, big, again, another big, long, athletic wing that there's a lot of refinement to be done for him to become a finished product. Maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't, but that was a big swing. They obviously didn't get up into the top couple of spots this year. Khan was, I think, sort of the consensus fourth player in the draft, and they drafted him fourth, which is fine. I think he's got a chance to be a nice player for them. But, they had Mark Williams. They thought they had the stuff from the Lakers back in the spring. They end up flipping him for Liam McNeely, who was a guy who was a top 15 or 20 pick all year, who fell to the end of the first round, and a future pick, which is decent business. But again, Mark Williams was a guy who they drafted, not this regime, but the prior one, drafted, I believe, at 14 or 15 in the first round. Yeah. So, they're just, despite the fact that they've been bad the past several years, they're still kind of stuck at the beginning, not too different from Utah and some of these other teams in terms of trying to turn the ship around. And your process can be good and sound on this stuff, but if you don't get talent in the door, it doesn't really matter. And, that's why this year is going to be very interesting for Charlotte. Can we see Brandon Miller stay healthy after he got hurt last year? Can we see LaMelo Ball actually stay on the court? Can we see Solomon take some steps forward? What will Knipple look like? Like, they're probably not going to be very good, but it's really not about that. It's about, can we see some improvement from these young guys? And most importantly, as we go back to the beginning, can we see LaMelo Ball on the court and producing for, an award minimum level of games or more?
Let's say something about LaMelo. One more thing before I move on. His 3-point percentage has dipped 3 years in a row. And meanwhile, over that span, he shot 40% more threes. So I expect your percentage should go down a little bit with more volume, but you're not looking for a guy in his early 20s to have his 3-point percentage go down 3 years in a row while he's putting up
Yeah,
11 again.
that's fine. It almost doesn't matter to me. Like he's played so little overall that like I none of it matters if he can't play more than 47 games. Like if we're talking about if we're back here talking about the Hornets next summer and he's played 45 games again or 50 games again or 40 games whatever, like
Yeah.
then we're just in the Zion Williamson territory with him going
Well,
forward. And then you
the,
can't do anything with your team.
the Hornets are a team searching for a direction. And he has to be either on the floor or in a trade for this team to find their direction.
Right.
All right. Our last team in the East, in the Southeast, the Washington Wizards, projected at 20-62, 15th.
Yeah, and likely last in the East.
Yeah. In a long-term rebuild. In the offseason, they traded for CJ McCollum and now have a couple of grown-ups that they hope will, with him and Chris Middleton. You know, the thing about last year,
I would argue they traded out of Jordan Poole more than they traded for CJ McCollum.
Agree.
As you said, they've got some
at least out of his contract.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the big thing was they knew that they were not going to be a good team last year. They were obviously tanking, but they were, for 3 months, give or take, had the worst differential in the history of the NBA. They were absolutely not making progress. After the trade deadline, they made some moves. They traded for Middleton and Marcus Smart, and they Alex Sarr. We'll say it's Alex Sarr, who was the number 2 overall pick last year after the All-Star break. 16 points, 6 rebounds, only shot 40% from the field. Okay, we mentioned Coulibaly. So Coulibaly, he only shot 42% for the French national team. Alex Sarr was on that team. I just don't think he was not in their rotation. He only played 2 games. I just don't think he's physically ready to play in that. I don't think it was more than
he's just such a bad offensive player right now. Honestly, both of them are just very bad offensive players. They both have really big time potential on the defensive end, but man, like it's hard to play 2 guys who just are that dreadful offensively in a league that's better offensively than it's ever been. And you know, you mentioned just it's one thing. We understand, like, if it's not tanking, like being bad part of the plan, you're trying to get top level talent, etc. Okay. But when you've got these young lottery picks and they're playing this just like no hope, awful team, that's when you worry about like the development of these guys. And the Jazz are kind of in a similar boat. Like you want to at least have good habits developing, you know, culture, competitiveness. And honestly, as bad as they're going to be, that is a concern. And I think that's why it's so important to have McCollum and Middleton there. Although I cannot imagine either of those guys are thrilled to be Washington Wizards, except for, you know, I'm sure like the 1st and 15th of every month are still pretty good, but they're
they're both on the last year of their contracts, so we'll see how that works out. To look at the bright side, they drafted Trey Johnson. They got incredibly unlucky in the lottery. There couldn't have been worse. They drafted Trey Johnson. And then they got, they took the flyer on Cam Whitmore. The Rockets had to offload some salary.
It was a very smart trade for them to make. And it's a zero risk for them.
Well, the Rockets had to unload some salary, and also having Whitmore occasionally sulking it on the bench wasn't a good thing. But
yeah, remember he had that great game last year, and they went to post game to talk to him, and then
it was a very bizarre
kind
of pouty interview, and there was like his maturity needs to improve. But you talk about an NBA athlete, a guy who can put the ball in the hole, like he has potential.
And he's going to get opportunities there. Yeah, like he's going to get as many opportunities as he wants.
He's definitely,
and that's also what I would say about Trey Johnson too.
Mm-hmm. Hey, AJ Johnson was a nice little swing for them. That they got in that Kuzma deal along with him. Like there's, that's the Wizards are doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of like finding ways to take high ceiling swings around the margins. But rebuilds are really hard when you don't have big time lottery luck, and when the lottery picks that you have drafted aren't close to being starting caliber players at this point.
Well, it's what we just talked about with Utah and Charlotte, right? Like the Wizards' process has been good. They've made solid trades. Like they're building out a roster. They're taking swing, like you just said, MacMahon. They've got, I think, 11. How many first round picks they have on this team? Alex Sarr, Trey Johnson, Bilal Coulibaly, Bub Carrington, Cam Whitmore, Will Riley, AJ Johnson, Kaishan George, Dylan Jones. That's 8 or 9 guys who are all on rookie scale first round pick contracts. I'm not saying they're all going to be stars. They're not going to be, but that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take swings on guys. You're supposed to take chances on guys. They're not all going to hit. Like that's what the Thunder did. That's what a lot of good teams have been built from that process, but the process is only as good as the talent you get in the door. And again, to use the Thunder example, because these guys have some Thunder people in house, right? They get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Yeah. Well, exactly. That's my point. They get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the trade. Yes, they get the second pick. You get Chet Holmgren. They also get Jalen Williams at 12, right? Like, you don't have to just get the first or second pick every year. And I'm not trying to say it's easy or like anything like that. It's not. But you gotta, if you do this, at some point, you gotta get talent in the door. And for as good as their process has been, like Charlotte, I think overall they've both been good. They don't have a lot of surefire talent yet. It's a lot of potential and question marks. And that's why it's probably going to be, another long year there with them hoping that they can get one of the top 4 picks and what's a loaded draft again next year.
Well, I'm going to give this Wizards front office regime credit for getting the answer right about when's the best time to plant a tree. Because the first thing they did when they got there was they planted the tree of their rebuild. They traded Bradley Beal. They got out of that deal for look, the Wizards were a purgatory team for a while. They got out of the Beal deal despite the no trade clause. And it wasn't about what they were getting necessarily. It was more about what they were getting off of and just, getting out of the purgatory and going into a rebuild. But that tree has not bared a whole lot of fruit to this point.
That's true. Well done. Well done.
Thanks.
Beautiful. You should be a writer.
No, I think about these tree analogies a lot because you like to use that one.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I heard you are doing soon, working on a new property and you're going to be looking into landscaping. So
do you know what trees is slang for?
I'm afraid.
Look it up.
Okay. All right. And that concludes our coverage of the Washington Wizards in the 25-26. Just kidding. All right.
Pretty close.
All right. Thank you very much to Jackson. Thank you to MacMahon. Thank you to Bontemps. Thank you for watching and listening to the Hoop Collective and sticking with us through the start of the football season. We'll be talking to you later this week.
Adios, amigos.